Welcome to the Strength Athlete Podcast, episode number 16. We're doing a nice little preview of Raw Nationals today, talking about some of the lifters to keep an eye out for, who we think will probably win these classes. Obviously, there's a couple of standouts. But before we get rolling, I just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the TSA podcast, that is LVD Fitness. They are giving away clean water for every single item bought on their website. You can find them at www.lvdfitness.com. I think they did just release an entirely new line of stuff, some of which is pretty darn cool. With me on the podcast today, we have Eric, Chris, and Bryce Lewis, if you guys want to say hi.
What's up? Hello.
So talking just, we're going to structure-wise follow basically the days laid out as they are with the kind of the calendar of Raw Nationals, talking mostly about lifters in prime time. There's maybe a dark horse or two we could mention, but starting off with day one, we've got those 47 kilo females. I don't think anyone stands to challenge Heather Connor there, right?
No, but it is something to note that Allegra, it does mess around in the equipped world, so nice to see her join us at Raw Nationals this year.
Most definitely. And we do see sometimes some of those equipped lifters who cross over from equipped to raw lifting tend to blow up pretty quickly and get just crazy strong. There's a couple lifters who were okay equipped lifters and crossed over and have become elite raw lifters. Someone like Brett Gibbs comes to mind, right?
I didn't know Brett started equipped.
Oh yeah, I think he was competing at the world level equipped years back. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
That's awesome.
So 52 kilo female. This is a little bit of a tighter race with Marissa still as the front runner. I would expect to see her run away with it. The battle for second, I think, will be a little bit more interesting between Susie and Tina. If you guys had to pick someone there, what do you think?
We might see some impressive stuff on the single lift stuff too, because I know Susie set the world record squat at Worlds. I think she chipped it by a half kilo. So she'll be close to peak form there this year. But I mean, the qualifying totals that we're looking at are pretty darn close here.
What do you guys think?
I might have to give the nudge to Tina here. Her training looks to be pretty good so far, leading into nationals. But then again, I also don't know what Susie looks like, so. But I think I'm going to have to give the nudge to her because she's been progressing well over the years.
I'd probably give the advantage to Tina there just because she's the stronger deadlifter and they'll be able to put on what she needs if it's a close race there.
Yeah, I got to agree.
We know from her training she can pull pretty slow and just keep the bar moving.
Yeah, pretty amazingly slow, actually. It's I always see the lifts, and it's like as soon as it comes off the floor, I'm like, nah, no way, and then she finishes it. And so that'll actually be an interesting one to watch. It's likely going to come down to the last deadlift if they both go 8 for 8. You got to give the edge to Tina being the bigger deadlifter, but we shall see. Going on to the 59 kilo males, based on the qualifying totals, or at least based on the classes, it looks like Matthew Remini is going to run away with it, but I don't think we can count out Dalton Lecoq.
Definitely. And he's competing as a 53, but because he's aging up, he's going to be an open 59 next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do as he grows into that weight class, because he's been a force in 53s during his junior career. So excited to see that and interested to see if he can hang with the 59s while competing as a 53 this year.
It'll be interesting to see him fill out as a 59 as well, just because Dalton's not a very tall guy, and I'm trying to imagine a person who I would categorize as thick who weighs 59 kilos, and it's going to be, I think that's what Dalton's going to end up being. It's going to be like he's a thick 59, and so that's just an interesting thing to think about. But regarding his cross registration, I didn't even know that was possible. Because like you said, he weighs under 53. But because he's on that age range, he can also register as an open 59, since there is no open 53 kilo class. So I'm hoping he comes in with some heat and gets to push Matthew Remini a little bit and keeps things interesting. 66 kilo class, I think we're going to see Keith McConaughey run away with it as usual, although there is a dark horse in this class. Chris, you brought this up earlier. Charles Okpoko, who is an absolute force in equipped lifting. I think he set the 66 kilo world record squat this year at the World Games.
I think that is, yeah, that's right.
he did what many people do and just went and did a qualifying meet and kind of got some lifts on the board to hit the total. And unfortunately, he was not included in prime time, but I think he is going to be totaling right up there, potentially as much as Keith, or who knows, we may see someone actually pushing Keith to move his total a little bit higher.
What do you think about that, by the way, guys? Do you think it's really important to be in the same class as the people that you plan on scoring highly against?
Absolutely.
Like in terms of attempt selection, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
I think coaching can make such a difference there as well. I would have to say that Charles is at a significant disadvantage based on the fact that he doesn't get to use his kind of broader experience making strategic calls and not necessarily winning by sweep. And I think head to head, if their totals were close, I think the person with more experience is going to come away ahead. And in that case, I think Charles would have it. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, basically, Charles is going to get his total on the board, and Keith is going to know exactly what he needs to do to beat him. Whereas in a realistic kind of two lifters in the same flight, it's going to be you have to take everything lift by lift. You don't really get to cherry pick what numbers you need to hit to win.
It also could be an advantage, the fact that notoriously Raw Nationals, the first day tends to run behind schedule. So he'll actually be lifting during the actual scheduled time, more normal lifting hours, whereas prime time couldn't run late. I mean, the first day of prime time last year, we were deadlifting at 1 a.m., so it could be an advantage that he's not in prime time.
It could be. It's always an interesting thing to consider, the timing. That's something people don't really think about at Worlds either. You know, if you fly out a day before you compete, your time zone is shifted by 12 or 14 hours, like it was this year when we were in Belarus. And where you are at a time where your circadian rhythm would normally have you asleep, you're taking your opening squat. And those things are definitely hard to plan for. I know lots of people, you, for example, Bryce, are shifting their training schedule around. So you're starting your training just generally later in the day so that, you're ready to take your deadlift at 9:30 p.m. or 11 p.m., whenever you're realistically going to have it. So it's definitely a factor. I would agree with you there.
I wanted to just give a little perspective on Charles because I think it's actually going to be a lot closer than people realize based on the qualifying totals, because he sandbagged his qualifying meet this year really hard, but his last actual raw meet was in 2015. He totaled 640, which is roughly 30 kilos behind Keith, but that was with missing all of his third attempts, and he's made a lot of progress since then as an equipped lifter. So I think we could see him somewhere in the range of maybe 670 or so, and that would make Keith have to have a pretty perfect day to beat him.
Well, I wanted to bring something additionally in that it's not just our national championship, but it's a stepping stone to the Worlds. And, we can talk about some of the, just the fact that there's an increased amount of drug test failures and an increased vigilance in terms of what athletes get selected for the national team. I think there's some increased scrutiny that now you have to have a history of drug testing. So we don't really know exactly how that works, but it's the case that if you win, you might not go to Worlds, or you might not be invited.
Yeah, they basically, because of the fact that some lifters had made it all the way up to the world level without, having a history of drug testing or competing at international meets, there's obviously the potential for them to fail there. We saw that with an athlete who made their way to an international qualifying Wilks meet and had never even been drug tested at a meet before that, despite winning probably every meet he's ever done and holding an American record deadlift. Somehow this guy didn't get tested at all. And whatever your opinion is on whether or not he was using substances, the fact of the matter is that someone like that needs to be tested at the local level before even getting to the higher level meets. And I think that falls a lot onto the meet directors. And the fact that somebody doesn't mean that they shouldn't be drug tested. Winners and record setters should always be tested, in my opinion. Anyway, 66 kilo, going to be interesting class. Let's move on to 57 females. Obviously, Jennifer Milliken being the favorite here. She, her total from Worlds this past summer would have been enough for her to win either the 57 or the 63 kilo class, and she's looking pretty hot coming into Raw Nationals, and I expect to see her bump her total up just a little bit further. Coming in second to her, we're probably going to have something close between Jessica Edwards, who's nominated in fifth, or Shea. I don't know why her qualifying total is 20 kilos shy of her best, but at the Arnold in 2017, she hit a 415 kilo total, which puts her tied with Ashley Svenby. And Christina Parachi, Melissa Barber, I don't know a whole lot about them. Maybe you guys do if they're coming in with a little bit of progress.
I'm not familiar with those, but Ashley did post something recently on Instagram, I believe, about being injured. So that's really unfortunate.
You know, I don't know if it's a selection bias, but it does seem like quite a few athletes are coming into nationals in less than peak form, whether it's just the season or, you know, just the way the cookie crumbles.
Well, this is kind of the point in training cycles where people are pretty beat up anyways, so it might shape up better than it looks right now for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Totally. And you know, ultimately when you're talking about the USA Powerlifting IPF competitors kind of competition calendar, for most classes, it's actually harder to make the world team than it is to place high at Worlds. And so this is arguably the most important competition of the year, right? So, you know, Bryce, like you have that coming up in the 105 kilo class, and there's more competition to place there. Well, than what you would see to place at Worlds. You know, basically the current national champion, the previous world champion, and the current American record holder in the total are going head to head against each other, and it's pretty cool just to see a close matchup like that. And we see that in a couple of the classes here, and we'll kind of get to those in a minute. 57s, though, I think Milliken is a lock. Moving on to 74s, I got to say Taylor Atwood, unless we see Blake Leahy coming in with a bunch of progress. What do you guys think?
I'd have to know if that meet that he's at, if he went a high number of made lifts. But, I mean, those totals aren't too far off. Taylor Atwood's coming in with what looks like a world record total at 733. Stephen or Blake Leahy is 715, so that's really not too far behind. You know, I mean, a handful of progress over a training cycle could make a difference there.
It could. If we see Taylor in shape, he looked like he had some room left on his squat at Worlds. His bench is always gigantic, and unfortunately, he loses it in the deadlift. It's kind of the trade-off with the bench typically when you're talking about the lighter guys. But who knows? We'll probably see Blake, you know, throw on whatever he needs to jump into first for his third deadlift, like he did at Raw Nationals last year. Unfortunately, last year it was magnetized to the ground, but we will kind of see how that goes this year. Coming in after that, I think we should see Eric Lapointe comfortably in third. He's got a big deadlift that's not reflected in his total there because he's a chump with weak hands and lost it at his last meet. But we will definitely see some good things coming in that class, I think.
You know, I was curious. Last year we were talking about kind of who's coming into nationals and whether they would want to go to Worlds, because Worlds was all the way in Belarus. This time it's going to be a little bit easier to make because it's up in Canada, which is probably less expensive and easier to get to. Do you think that's going to affect people's decisions on whether or not to go?
I don't know. It was pretty easy to get to Belarus, man. Ask Eric.
We don't need to go into that.
Eric didn't have a problem getting there. It was staying in the country that he had more issues with.
Oh no, he had to buy 2 round trip tickets. Actually, he ended up eating the cost of his original ticket because he couldn't fly through Russia, and then he had to leave to go to Ukraine, and then we spent a day getting paperwork done. It was a huge pain in the ass. Belarus sucks. If any of you guys are listening, if anyone from Belarus is listening, your country sucks. At least for immigration purposes.
Taylor actually had a similar issue trying to get over there.
He did. They had to take a train, didn't they?
Yeah. I got a frantic message from Taylor like, dude, how do I get into the country? While we were there, he was stuck in an airport, and they're like, no, you can't get on the plane here, man. You flew through Russia. And it was actually, it's funny in retrospect. It was pretty, you know, I don't want to say frightening, but odd at the time to go through. And you know, I'm glad we did, but I would prefer to not experience travel difficulties like that again. Preferably. On to the 63 kilo females. I got to say, this is probably the most, well, I won't even say probably. I think it is going to be the most exciting female class to watch. We have the former world champion, seeing as she didn't compete at Worlds this past year, current national champion, current world record total holder, best bencher in the entire world, male or female, Jennifer Thompson. And she's coming in with, you know, not a lot of us knowing how she's going to do. We haven't seen her compete in a full meet basically since last Raw Nationals. Or did she compete at the Arnold?
She did.
Okay, so it's a 2017 Arnold.
Yeah, I think she just did bench this year at the Arnold.
Yeah, so last Arnold.
So the best guess that I would have is probably some kind of injury reflecting in either her squat or her deadlift, and so we really don't know what to predict in terms of how that's going to go. I hope she comes in top form because these other three girls are equally capable of a total right up there with her, and it would be fantastic to see 4 people pushing Jennifer Thompson when it's been probably a decade since she's had anyone that could even touch close to what she can do. You guys got to pick one now. Who do you think's going to win? I want to know your guys' picks. You got to say it publicly.
Gonna have to root for Sam.
Do we all have to pick someone different?
No.
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 I'm gonna pick Natalie Tirana. I think she's made a little bit more bench progress than what her total shows. So we'll see.
I'm torn between Sam and Dunsmore, so I'll pick Dunsmore to be different.
You guys are so soft. I got to go with Kristen Dunsmore. I've been watching her training, and her lifts look like she's improved basically since her last meet peak, and generally her meet peaks reflect pretty well how her training in preparation reflects pretty well how she's going to do in the meet. Based on that, I think she's going to be good for definitely a chip on the record of the squat record she just set, if not a little bit more. I think it's going to be really key that she takes in that half-kilo advantage going into the end of the meet, so that, for example, if Sam wants to pull to win, she's going to have to beat her by that 2.5 instead of pulling to set another record. And, potentially we may see Sam take a crack at Kimberly Walford's untouchable deadlift record in the 63 kilo class.
Or Natalie too.
Or Natalie, which, I don't doubt that either of those girls are going to put what they need on to win at the end of the meet. But I think that Kristen's going to bring in a really strong subtotal, and I think she's going to do great regardless.
And I want to mention
it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I want to mention for those that can't see the chart we're looking at that the qualifying totals are exactly matched between the 3 of those women we're talking about. They're all at 462.5 kilos, which is so cool to see. 2 of those
and they all hit
same
that
meet.
Total. Yeah, within the same week, they all hit that.
Yeah.
And
So-
the really fun part about that, all 3 of those totals would have won Worlds this year. and that's exactly the same as Jennifer Milliken's qualifying total in a class lower. Pretty damn cool. Moving on to the 83 kilo males. Unfortunately, we have no John Hack this year, and yet we are left with another standout who is going to run away with it in Russell Orhai, most likely. If we saw some critical mistakes, we may see an opportunity for someone like Sean Noriega to step up and pull a big third deadlift, which historically we've seen a couple of key missed lifts from him. So he potentially has quite a few more kilos in his total than what is reflected here in the qualifying number. So I would really love to see that happen, as I don't love it when one athlete runs away with it. And it would be really cool to see someone come from behind and win.
I'm kind of disappointed we don't have John Gruden there this year. I was hoping we'd get to see a rematch of the Junior World Championships where Sean and John went head-to-head and came down to the last lift. And they've been really close since Nationals last year in terms of totals. So it's too bad they don't get to battle it out one more time.
Can we take a minute and just talk about how ridiculously jacked John Gruden is?
or Russell here in the 83s.
Russell, too.
Oh, yeah, true.
Dude, I mean, John makes Russell look small. He's so freaking just. I mean, I didn't really realize he posted a photo on Instagram the other day, and he didn't have a shirt on, and he was like flexing, holding a fish or some sort of, manly thing. And good God,
Myron?
he is. Yeah, it was fucking Myron. And I mean, it just impressive. That's really. I mean, that's genetics at work.
Yeah.
I was
going to say, staying with the 83s, it looks like there's going to be some battles for the podium at least. Those top 2 are a little higher, but there's some pretty close qualifying totals in the next 6 athletes, or in the next 4 athletes.
I think we may see a more interesting matchup amidst the juniors, or the battle for second. I know that Cody Yeager always has tremendously large numbers in training. If he can bring those into the meet, he's got quite a few more kilos that can be put onto his total. It has potential to be a very interesting class. If we see Russell make a couple of key mistakes, if we see Sean make a couple of clutch lifts, if we see Cody Yeager bring his gym training in, someone like Charlie Dixon making a bunch of progress, it really does have the potential to be a fun class to watch. I would love to see 3 different people battling it out for that first place spot, but we'll have to see how it goes on the day of the meet. All right.
Day
Moving
4,
on to
Friday.
Yeah, 72 kilo females, the Kimberly Walford class. One more example of just an absolute standout athlete running away with it. Kimberly has been dominating the 72 kilo class worldwide for quite a while. She was very nearly beaten this year at Worlds. I think she only won by half a kilo, something like that. Or maybe it was 2. It was either 2 kilos or half a kilo. Basically, it was one increment of a lift that she won by. She missed her third deadlift at the knee, and the Brazilian whose name I can't remember.
Anna.
Anna Rosa Castellane.
Yep.
She missed her third deadlift as well. That would have been a 2.5 kilo jump that would have just shot her, I think, a half kilo ahead of Kimberly. Crazy finish to the meet, probably the closest she's ever been to not really running away with it, and it was a lot of fun to watch, actually. I think the real exciting story here is going to be the battle for the second. We've got Chelsea Savitt and Priscilla Ribic, very close on qualifying totals. Priscilla going to run away with it in Masters 1, I think, but I expect that to be a fun battle for second.
I wouldn't count out Chloe Dublin for that as well.
Yeah,
she's a extremely strong squatter and still very young. She's a T3 right now and making progress from meet to meet, so she could be right in the mix for that as well.
She also executes on game day. She had a tremendous performance at Worlds this past year.
Really
they
impressive.
messed up her bench warm-ups, did one warm-up, and basically went out there and went 3 for 3 and PR'd. So,
damn,
doing the old Keith McHoney, huh? For those of you who don't know, Keith McHoney is kind of infamous for the fact that he takes no warm-ups. He gets on the foam roller a little bit and goes out and squats 500 pounds ice cold. What we would consider ice cold.
Give the man his 315.
No, that was only at Worlds the year before last, and honestly, it's impressive more than anything. It's absolutely insane by anybody's traditional standards of how we remain injury free. But Keith always seems to come into the meets injury free, and if he does in the gym what he does at the meets, that is amazing. I mean, that's truly just injury resilient genetics showing themselves through right there. Anyway, back to the
warm-ups in the jungle, Hani.
Yeah. Brandon Lilly must be coaching him. Moving back to the classes here, we may see Rory Alter jump up in for placing in the top 3 as well. She looks like she's been making some progress in her training. Rory is absolutely savage to watch on meet day. She's a lot of fun. There's a lot of pictures of her out there kind of like screaming at the bar, and she's queen intensity, really. And she's kind of like, I hate to make this comparison, I'm sorry, Rory, but your intensity kind of reminds me of Lane Norton a little bit on meet day. And it's just absolutely attacking the lifts, and I'm excited to see what she can put together on meet day. Moving on to the 93s. Oh,
before we get there, Chris mentioned that when we're looking at these qualifying totals, the way that the entry was set up, you have to submit your highest qualifying total or your highest total ever. Is that right, Chris?
Well, within the qualifying time frame. So your best total within the time frame that's required to put up a qualifying total had to be posted. So very thankful to Mike Zolinski for going through this, but basically he has some sort of software set up so that this kind of checks it with the USAPL lifting database, and if people's total was registered with a lower amount, it would switch it out and put their best total.
Wow, that's fancy. So my next question is, to what degree then do we think that essentially the qualifying totals that we see here are going to stack up to how people actually place? So how much mix-up do you think there is? Is it just kind of a class-by-class basis?
I think it would be a highly lifter individual. Going back to 57, someone like Shea Edwards, for example, her name has been put in differently for every meet she's ever done because she's Jessica Shea Edwards. And so she's Jessica Edwards at some meets, Shea Edwards at others, and Jessica Shea Edwards at yet others. And so her qualifying total that got kind of sought out by that little program that Mike wrote is 20 kilos lighter than what she's actually done at 57 in a meet officially at the Arnold. And so she is seated in 5th when in fact she should be seated in 2nd, having beaten out Sven beyond bodyweight previously. So there are probably a couple cases of things like that happening here. I know there are several people who have different entries based on their names. So I doubt it's more than maybe 2 to 3% of people, which, that's, you're talking about 20 to 40 people at this meet, but who knows?
if you something that happens in this case, you can email Mike about the duplicate entries, and he will combine them for you.
Perfect.
Good to know. The other thing that might cause some of those mix-ups is just people who've made a lot of progress since whatever total is listed here, and that's always really exciting to see. You mentioned Chloe, who just seems to be constantly improving and puts up great performances on the platform. So I really like to see that when, not necessarily that you count an athlete out, but they're ranked a little bit lower and they overperform in competition. Those are those kind of moments you remember.
Most definitely. And we always look for those things, but I think a lot of times consistency wins it out. This actually perfect segue into 93s. My favorite for 93s has got to be Moneymaker McLean. That guy, he had a crazy performance at Worlds, came up from behind, and I think, 3 or 4 different people missed the deadlift to beat him, and he ended up winning and being the world champion. And it looked like he had a good bit of room left. He just has hit some absolutely ridiculous numbers in training recently. I've said this about other people before, but more so than anybody, I would say, I don't think there's any person that I think is more deserving of being a national world champion than LS. He is just a quality human being. And so I got to say, I'm excited to see him compete. I'm excited to see how he's improved. I know he cuts a little bit of weight, so hopefully that doesn't take too much out of him. I do hope we see David Ricks push him as well. But historically, I have thought Ricks squats a little bit on the high side. And, we saw that reflected at Worlds, where he ended up leaving with 1 of 3 squat attempts because he was high on the first 2. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Didn't he compete at the Invitational in Australia as well? And not have the best day overall?
I don't know if he actually lifted down there. I know he was there. I know he was supposed to, but I don't remember.
I think he broke his own record there. He chipped it.
Yeah, right around 325 kilos. Heavy. Very heavy record.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys that can really just put in some work under the barbell. The cool thing is both Dave and LS are going to have big subtotals, but by a different way. Ricks from the squat and LS from the bench.
Yeah, Ricks is definitely going to need 3 squats to make it interesting. And from what I understand with some of the people that train with him, he's going to be trying to come with a huge squat. So if you can get those to depth and beat his own record, he's going to be definitely in contention there. And then we definitely can't count out David Wilson, who is by far the biggest deadlifter of the group. And again, he's one, if he can put together a good subtotal, he's going to be able to put basically whatever he needs on the bar. And, we'll see what happens at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised to see him attempting something like 820 or 830 on the third to move up into third, first. And I wouldn't even call that unreasonable based on how his pulls have looked up to this point. His last meet, I think he had a little bit of trouble with getting called for that soft lockout. Where we want to see people standing fully erect, and what that means is that your shoulders typically aren't in front of your hips, and some of the judges were kind of making calls for that we may agree or disagree with, but ultimately it's up to those judges, and there is a jury at this meet which will give him an opportunity to protest things like that. So we'll have to see how it goes. I hope we see everyone go 8 for 8 and it come down to the last lifts. I would love to see Ricks get 3 squats, just because if you've never watched him lift, for anyone listening, it's unbelievable. This is what this guy does. You'll take his first squat and you'll say he's got 5 kilos left. He'll add 25 to it and it'll move faster. And then he'll add 25 to that, and it'll be the grind of a lifetime. You can go back and watch the highlights from the Arnold Pro-Am. Was it Pro-Am? Not the Pro-Am. Whatever the one he lifted in at the Arnold was. It was on the main stage. His third squat, it was just there were like 3 points there where I thought he was going to lose it, and somehow he managed to finish it. I got to say, though, I'm a little disappointed that he has stopped doing his deadlifts in those Nike retirement shoes. I was a big fan of those. I know most of the internet was a big fan of those, and I'm hoping he brings them back for some power on the third.
It's interesting, though. In this 93 class, we've got a squat specialist, a bench specialist, and a deadlift specialist in those top 3 spots there. Now, is David the guy that sets his feet almost wider than the plates?
Yeah, his toes are past the plates.
That's so crazy to me.
And then we can't talk about 93s without mentioning Lane Norton, can we? I don't think it's fair. Former national champion Lane. He had a great meet to qualify just a little while ago. Had a killer third squat. I think it was like 620 or 630 or something, and it moved pretty well. Looked like he had as much strength there as he's ever had on his squat, but he did just strain his back. Was it 3 weeks? Are we 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out? Who knows? We may see him pushing up there in the squat. I think placing wise, just because of kind of the lack on the bench and not really the standout on the deadlift, we don't really see him moving into the top 5, but who knows? Maybe he's got something up his sleeve that we don't know about.
Also, just got to shout out my guy Chance Mitchell, who's going to be in the running for placings in both open and junior. So that'll be fun for us.
I mean, looking across the juniors, that's a top 3 just based on what we're listing here, if not higher. And I know like, all these guys are looking for spots at Worlds.
From what I understand, Danny Sullivan isn't going to be competing because of an oblique injury, which is unfortunate. Ashton is obviously the favorite there, but if he makes some mistakes, who knows what could happen. And then there's also Andrew Jones, who just missed the cutoff for prime time here, who's a really strong junior who could put up a big total as well.
I'm actually interested to see how Ashton does. That guy is an absolute freak of nature. Another person, kind of John Gruden-esque in terms of how he's built, just absolutely ripped to shreds year round, and has been since, from what I understand, since he was like 13. Well, probably since birth. Kind of a good example of what, if you go Google search myostatin deficiency, Ashton Rauska is like an example picture. And so it'll be cool. I hope he does well. I hope everyone does well. I got Darrington qualified just below him and got some big numbers in training. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun class. I think it's going to be between those 3 that we mentioned for first place and then kind of the battle for 4th. But, key mistakes can happen anywhere. So it'll definitely be an interesting thing to watch break down. Going on to the Saturday lifters, we've got the female 84s and the pluses. Daniela Mello looking like she is going to absolutely crush it in the 84s and move on to a world championship thereafter. I don't think anybody stands to even challenge her. I think she could probably put this 30-kilo lead total up without really struggling on her second attempts.
Also, she switched to sumo since Worlds, and her deadlift has blown up. So it'll be really interesting to see how her sumo does in competition, since this will be her first competition with pulling sumo.
Maximum cheater.
I feel like there was a little bit more of a close competition in this class last year. I'm trying to think of who's not on this roster, but I announced at this division last year, and I remember a few names coming up that I don't see here.
Natalie Henson, one being one of them.
Yeah, but she wasn't there last year.
I think she would. I don't think she's competed since 2015.
But never mind.
Yeah, I'll see if I can think of it by the time this episode ends. But yeah, I mean, Melo's looking super dominant, and it's interesting to see kind of a changing of the guard as some of these people who have dominated the classes for probably a decade or so in Alicia Webb and Jennifer Thompson kind of getting challenged now.
What were you saying, Chris?
Natalie placed 3rd last year, by the way.
Oh, she did compete last year. There you go. Which, shout out to Natalie. She's making her way over to Equip Worlds coming up in November, and she is seated as number 1. And although Bryce Lewis is not very familiar with her or her numbers, it's looking like she's going to come away with a world championship over Ilya Strick, who is just an incredibly seasoned competitor and probably the most muscular female I've ever met in my entire life. Bryce, you're a little red over there.
Yeah. I feel like I should have remembered that.
Oh man. That's okay. I occasionally forget totally relevant things as well. Moving on to
Sabrina Davis last year.
Yep.
That's
the one, yeah.
So the 84 pluses, I think it's pretty obvious Bonika's going to run away with this. Always happy to see her win. She is what I would consider a great ambassador for the sport. She is a lot of fun to be around and just a generally cool person. Leanne Hewitt nominated in 2nd, and if she's made any progress, who knows, she may be up there as well.
Leanne's been slowly catching up over the years, and I think we're not too far away from her starting to challenge Bonica for the top spot. I think we might be maybe a year or two away from that still, but she's 30 kilos behind on nominations right now, and continuing to make progress. So that transition is probably going to happen in the next few years, where they're starting to go head to head and make it a little bit more interesting.
And interestingly enough, this qualifying total for Leanne is 15 months old. So I should hope within the past year and a quarter that she has made some progress, and she may, this may end up being closer than we think.
The only caveat, though, is with Leanne. I believe, if I remember correctly, she sat out of Open Nationals this year because she was injured. So also something to consider there.
She's also been more focused on weightlifting because she's a hopeful for the Olympics in the next go around. So I think she's been putting more energy into that training. So we'll see how it carries over.
Awesome. That's cool. I didn't know that. Well, good luck to you, Leanne, if you end up hearing this. Moving on to the 105 males, this will, in my opinion, be the most exciting male class. Bryce, who do you think is going to win?
Oh, that's a good question. My money's on Lewis. He's looking strong this year. No, actually, not that strong. But yeah, it's going to be
modest as well. Strong and modest.
It's going to be a good meet.
It is going to be a good meet. If you can't tell through the audio, Bryce is breathing heavily right now. He's getting a little bit excited. This is pretty much the most exciting thing we get in terms of powerlifting, be it competing or coaching, is when we get a class where either a friend or ourselves is going up against, in my case, another one of my friends, and it's a close race. So we've obviously got Garrett Blevins, Bryce Lewis, and Eli Burks. Garrett, the current American record holder for the total, Bryce, the current national champion, and Eli, the former national and world champion, going head-to-head against each other in what will prove to be a very, very fun competition. I think Eli held the world record total for about 10 minutes this year at the Arnold, prior to Garrett just absolutely crushing it at the best meet of his life. I don't know that we're going to see another showing like that from Garrett, hopefully. If we do, that would be fantastic. But, those standout meets only happen once in a while, and we'll just have to see how it goes. What do you guys think? Who's your pick? Yeah, you guys can't sit out from this one just because Bryce is part of the race. It's
hard to know where Eli is going to be, because he hasn't been posting a whole lot. He's posted some training recently, but he tends to squat kind of high in training. Usually hasn't had an issue with that in a meet, but he's always had a huge deadlift. And I think with all the strongman training that he's done between his off season, I think his deadlift has probably only improved, and we could maybe see him put something like 820, 830 on the bar if he needs it. So I think regardless of where people are at the end, Eli is probably going to put what he needs on the third, and that's, who knows.
I've actually never seen Eli miss a deadlift for strength. We saw him pull to get into first at Worlds in 2016, and
he was pulling for a record at the time.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. He was in first. He was pulling for a record, and his hand just ripped open, as it does with 800 pounds. And you can ask Ben Rice about that. And unfortunately, he ended up not getting that lift. And then at Raw Nationals 2015, I think he was shaken in the middle of a lift, and some inconsiderate spotter didn't tighten the collar enough, and the plates actually vibrated off the bar. And he got another attempt. And naturally, you don't have two grinds like that in you, and that would have been the lift for him to win. And that was back when we still had Nick Tidluki dominating the 105 kilo class. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I think 100% we will see Eli take a crack at whatever he needs on the third deadlift to win. He's going to have Ben Esgro there coaching him, I'm sure, and Ben is a very smart guy when it comes to attempts. And Bryce, you're bringing in a lot of balance. If we see Garrett bring in a third squat, 700 plus, we'll be looking at a pretty tight race for that first place position. I think equally interesting will be the race for fourth. We have a few guys here who have made a bunch of progress. Botsy Bailey, if he brings in some big lifts, is capable also of crazy deadlift. So I think we'll see him pulling probably to try to jump up placing, potentially even into third or second with whatever he needs.
Yeah, it looks like Garrett's made a good amount of progress. Just peeking at some training here and there. And Hani, I know you coach Kevin Mays, and he's been making some steady progress as well.
Yeah, I think Kevin Mays and Nicholas Cadiz are going to be right there with each other. Nick in particular has this total is about 30 kilos shy of reflecting what he's done in the gym, and so none of those really being reaches. So I'm excited to see what he does. And as well as Kevin. If we could bring that third deadlift, Kevin is just an absolute monster with conventional deadlifts, probably good for up to, on a good day, 770 or 780. And so we'll have to see how that goes.
Well, one of the stories might be Giddis trying to take the bench national record.
Yes, Dennis Cheery, who is just an absolute titan in powerlifting when it comes to, well, a titan in bench pressing. And he holds does he hold the 93 kilo record right now?
93 and 105, yeah.
Yeah, he holds the 93 and the 105 kilo bench press record. I think we'll be expecting to see Nicholas Giddis take that from him pretty comfortably, I think. I believe it's set at 230 something kilos right now. It's like 512 pounds. And I would expect to see Nick squeeze that out on the third without too much struggle.
Damn, it's impressive.
Our buddy Ben Rice might be in the mix for top 5 as well if his deadlift is on. So he's maybe 10, 15 kilos outside of that right now, but he's made some progress, and I think he'll be right in the mix there too.
I agree. If this total right here reflects Ben not having a third deadlift or third squat at the Arnold, and he's still nominated in what is 10th or 8th or something like that. So if we bring a third squat as well as a third deadlift from Ben, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pulling to jump up and placing as well.
You have not seen my true power.
Yes, it's precisely. But Ben is incredibly strong. He unfortunately loses a little bit of ground in the deadlift, but he's right up there with everyone in terms of the squat, or the bench press. I mean, he's right up there with everyone in terms of the squat and the deadlift. So that'll be fun to watch, in my opinion.
One thing that I did notice is that the 105s have no juniors in prime time, whereas every other weight class seems to be saturated with them, except the bigger boys.
Yeah, you're right, actually. It's a good
Oh
observation.
yeah, speaking of that, the 105 junior race for the national team spot is going to be pretty interesting. Luke Graham and Michael Pinocchia are nominated 2.5 kilos apart. And then there's another guy, I believe Michael Davis, who's nominated maybe 15 kilos ahead of them. But I think those three are going to be in a pretty tight race.
Most definitely. Pinocchio is looking super strong right now. His training is looking fantastic. So I love Luke Graham. Luke, if you're listening to this, which you probably will, I'm sorry, I don't mean to pick against you, but I think I got to go Pinocchio here. Prove me wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. Moving on to the 120s, D. Corn. I don't think anybody is going to touch Dennis Cornelius until he decides to only take first attempts at a meet.
Even then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
No,
he just continues to push the boundaries of what I think is possible, like what powerlifting thinks is possible. It's just a pleasure to watch him. And yeah, go ahead.
Do you guys think he's gonna take 410 in the meet?
No, I don't think so. I think we may see him take a chip over what he needs to set a record in terms of what his previous record was. But I saw that 900 squat that he did in the gym was absolutely asinine. It was, in my opinion, definitely high for Dennis's standards, though. There's a particular kind of physical attribute you can watch in him. He starts to kind of internally rotate at the hips to be able to physically get to depth just because of squeezing himself down there. And we didn't see any of that on that 900. So I think he still has a little ways to go to get to depth there. But I definitely think we'll see a gigantic squat from him. Again, I would love to be proven wrong. I just don't think that particular weight is going to depth this soon.
I mean, Matt and Susie are probably going to be handling him, and I think they'll handle him similar to Ray in that they don't really have to worry about beating the competition. Like, they know he's going to Worlds as long as he makes his first attempt on each lift, and they kind of just get to decide what to put on the third based on what the second looks like, and that's a wonderful place to be, just in terms of choosing numbers. I don't know how they choose thirds for Ray, but I imagine whatever goes into that calculus is going to be similar for Cornelius.
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised to see him trying to put together the lifts he needs for 1,000 kilo total or something like that. I know that it's something he's been aiming for to get back to the top of the 275 all-time record list for the tested or untested lifters. I think PL Watch keeps track of that, and he's only in like second or third now. I think he's not far removed from that, having only just recently been ousted by someone else that I can't remember the name of. But I know one of his limitations, at least at Worlds, and this was kind of the same story with everyone. The bar was kind of gunked up with that weird chalk, and he had a hard time kind of holding on to it. So I think it was his third deadlift that slipped out of his hands. So if we see him having brought a little bit of extra grip work, which he very well may have, we may see a pretty healthy improvement on his total. The kind of thing you don't normally see from a lifter at this level, like 15 or 20 kilos. Who knows?
Yeah.
Any other notables here in the 120s? We've got Jared Martin, who looks to be comfortably in second, although 100 kilos behind Dennis Cornelius. That's 220 pounds for anyone who doesn't speak Eastern units. He is 45 kilos ahead of Tristan Nazelrod in third, so I think he's going to be comfortably in second there.
Ryan Stills is a good buddy out from Oregon. It's just good to see him up at this high level as an M1, and he'll have a blast with it. He's fun to watch. We've got our buddy Joe Franzo. My athlete Matt Cronin made prime time. He's super excited about that. So, Sunday night will be really fun.
Unfortunately, Dominic Sirianni sitting this one out. I think he's having a baby. I think he has his priorities totally out of order, not coming to Raw Nationals because he's having a baby. Shame on you, Dominic.
Yeah, they're expecting on the week of the meet, actually, so...
But also, congratulations.
Not the great. Yeah, definitely.
Isn't there a pill they can take to make that a little longer?
But speaking of the M1s, Ryan Stills is actually coming up from competing as a 105 the past year, so I think he's actually gonna total higher than where he's nominated, and he's eating into this meet, so he might end up closer to Jared than it looks on the nominated totals.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I love a close race. And speaking of the opposite of close races, with the supers, we got Ray, who is just, again, he is further ahead than Dennis is further ahead of the person behind him. So Ray is, what is this, 105, basically 180 kilos ahead of the person behind him, or 175 kilos ahead.
That's like 400 pounds.
Yeah, something like that.
Almost.
Yeah.
That's like a fourth lift for a lot of people.
For perspective, in terms of the all-time records, among people with knee wraps, Ray in knee sleeves is like the fourth-ranked total or fifth-ranked total of all time.
Wow.
Behind the likes of people like Eric Lillibridge and Andrei Milanichev, and you got those names, and then right there in fourth you have Ray Williams. And so I'm really excited. I would love to, and he's not behind by much. It's only 10 or 20 kilos. And so I would love to see Ray put together that total to take number one on that list. That would be absolutely huge. It's from an IPF standpoint, the list doesn't mean all that much, but in terms of proving that you can be the best without needing things like knee wraps, I think Ray has the absolute strength to do it. We may see him take a crack at a 500 kilo squat here.
I would love to see that.
What do you guys think? Is it going to happen?
Hopefully he doesn't decide to wear a new pair of shoes again this time.
True.
For those of you who aren't aware, apparently at Worlds, Ray switched his shoes, and it was they were tied differently or something, and they kind of stopped him from getting the amount of dorsiflexion he wanted in his squat, so he had trouble getting down to depth comfortably. Couldn't hit the hole quite as hard, and couldn't get as much stretch reflex, and apparently that took some away from his squat, which is totally feasible. You only need to lose like 2% when you're talking about 500 kilos to not get the attempt that you wanted. So. If he gets back into some equipment he's familiar with and is ready to go, I know he squatted 1,003 in training yesterday, and so there's if my math isn't wrong here, I think there's 197 pounds, or no, 97 pounds between that and what he wants. But I think he's absolutely strong enough. Whether or not it gets put on the bar is the big question.
I have a feeling they're going to wait until it's an official record, so maybe at the Arnold next year. Unless he looks extremely on that day, but I would guess he ends up maybe somewhere around 485, 490.
Which is still insane, regardless.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Disappointing, super disappointing squat for 490 kilo. No, I don't know. I think Ray will probably do better at any domestic meet because the crowd's going to be bigger, and I like to think of him a little bit like the Incredible Hulk, where the Hulk gets more angry, he gets stronger. When Ray gets more fired up by a crowd, his squats seem to speed up and get deeper. And so, and same thing with his deadlifts. It's when there's not really all that hype there, he doesn't seem to just kind of thunder through these things the way that he can. So I think if there's a good crowd, which Sundays are a little bit challenging for that at the end of a 7-day meet, we'll see. If there's a good crowd, I think he's going to blow it up.
Oh, Ray will have a good crowd no matter what.
There was a good atmosphere last year in Atlanta, and this is going to be kind of a smaller room, and it's going to be more people kind of packed in there, so it'll be pretty hyped up.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that. Nominated in second, we have our good buddy Jason Mike. He is a very good lifter and an exceptional among top 3 or 5 in the world bench presser. So if is he not the record holder currently in the M1s?
In M1s, definitely, yeah.
And I think he's not far behind for Open.
Right, in Open he's just behind Thomas Davis.
Yeah, I know he's been chasing a 600 raw bench for a long time and just hasn't been able to lock it in competition. So if there's one wish that I have for him, it's to nail this competition.
He did it in a meet recently. But besides his bench, his other lifts actually look like they're coming together pretty well. So I think this might be the time for him to actually put together one of his best totals. He struggled with a leg injury going into the Arnold earlier this year, and his squat wasn't quite where he wanted it to be at Worlds this year. But I think it looks like just based on his training recently, he'll be able to potentially put together his best total.
And it's very tight between the nominations for 4th place and let me see here, 8th place, within a 67.5 kilo total at the top, 867.5 and 850 down at the bottom. I am Tyree right there with 847.5. The standout there in my mind, Joseph Pena. He is, you don't really comprehend that he's 19, I think, 18 or 19. And he is just an absolute giant among young men with an 800 plus squat, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's going to try to take a shot at a 900 pound squat. He was setting up for it at the NAPF meet this summer in Orlando, and it wasn't quite there yet, but I think he's going to take a run at that again in October.
Most definitely. It's cool to see him coming up. I think he has a long and illustrious career of powerlifting ahead of him, and he is just so good as such a young man coming out of I think he's from Texas, right? So he comes out of that Texas powerlifting culture where there's, I think, more people competing in powerlifting at the high school level in Texas than there are people playing football in the state or something. No, probably not football, but there's another sport. Basically, you know what it is? There's more people in the Texas State High School Powerlifting Association than there are in USA Powerlifting nationwide. And that's a tremendous statistic if you really think about it. I mean, the state of Texas is gigantic. Powerlifting is gigantic therein. And so we just see a lot of talent come from there because it is a much bigger pool.
Yeah.
Overall, though, what would you guys say are your most anticipated classes to watch? If someone has to tune in for prime time and watch only one male and one female class, I think I know what your answer is going to be. But what do you guys think?
I think the obvious choices are 63 women and 105 men. Just seems to be the tightest races across the board.
I think 93s are going to be really good too. But yeah, 93s and 105s on the men's side, 63s by far on the women's side.
Eric, I've got to agree with you, and the reason why I also select 93s is just because you've got some people who are crazy at a single lift, so we get some chances to see national records, and like if I'm a spectator watching, that's the kind of fun stuff that really hypes me up to see. So that'll be really awesome to just see people just going for it.
I think we're selling LS short a little bit by calling him a single lift specialist. He does have a world-class squat as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we're expecting to see him.
Yeah, I'm sorry. His bench is just an outlier to me. He's great at the other lifts, absolutely.
He's I would say the only place where LS struggles in a relative standpoint is he's kind of behind the pack on the deadlift for people as elite as he is. But he is absolutely a subtotal guy, and I think he's going to bring in a fantastic subtotal.
Yeah, he squatted 306 recently in the gym, and if he can bring that in a meet, I mean, he would post a huge total, like 850 or something like that.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I hope we see
you guys
bring 3 squats.
I was gonna say, hopefully you guys understand kilos. That's a 675 squat and like a 1870 total or something like that.
a lot. It's heavy, is what Eric is trying to say. It's a lot of weight.
Eric is a savant when it comes to conversions, by the way. So shout out to our numbers guru.
He's really good at multiplying by 2.2 in his head.
2.2046.
Sweet. Right. So I think with that, we can wrap it up here, guys. I am really excited. We're basically 2 weeks out from the start of the meet as of tomorrow, opening up with those kind of junior classes that don't kind of segue into the opens. And I couldn't be more excited. Bryce, obviously, good luck in the 105s.
Thank you.
And good luck to everybody that we have mentioned here. It's just such a fun meet to go and watch every year. The energy is awesome. The meet is long, the sessions are long, the days are long. We'll probably be coaching through most or all of the sessions, but I couldn't be more excited. I have such a great time every year. I would encourage anybody who is thinking about going to Raw Nationals in future years or who lives near it in Florida, come spectate, participate if you can. It's definitely a really fun meet.
Yeah, and if you guys are there this year, please come say hi to us or any of our athletes, and be happy to just chat your ear off about the same stuff.
Most definitely. Awesome. So with that being said, thank you for listening. One more time, shout out to LVD Fitness for sponsoring our podcast. You can check them out at www.lvdfitness.com. I am at Hani_TSA on Instagram. You can find all of us with our first names, Bryce and Eric_TSA, except for Christopher, the Rebel Aydin. He is Aydin_TSA. And with that, we will tune out. Cool.